Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan McNeil. This is the Builder by Day podcast. Today, I'm having a conversation with Joshua Council, who is the co-founder of the Good Robot Brewing Company, among other things.
Among other things.
Among other things.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate you joining me.
Love being here.
Excellent. So, you and I are not known to one another. So, like any other conversation, we were just chatting a bit here and kind of getting to know each other. But I always prefer to start the conversation by giving you a chance to let people know a little bit about who you are and your business, and then we'll take the conversation from there.
Sure. So was born in Ottawa, Ontario, to two parents, Sharon and Noel, who ran Canada's longest running murder mystery dinner theater.
Okay.
So was raised in not only sort of an entrepreneurial household, small business owners, but also a very alternative industry to most of my friends' families who worked for the federal government in Ottawa. So their parents had titles like director of, officer of, etc. And my dad's self-appointed title was chief crime officer or something like that of Eddie May Murder Mysteries. So, I think from the get-go was sort of destined to be a little bit weird, a little
Unique.
bit off the... Unique's
the word.
Quirky.
Yeah, there you go.
Interesting, whatever you want to call it. And also had a bizarre obsession with Disney from a very young age. So I was one of those kids who had the at age 6, I had the bike route, 93 houses, stuff in the penny savers on a Saturday night to deliver them in the snow Sunday morning. And with that money, I would rent the Walt Disney World vacation planning VHS from the local video store.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I was not very popular. So watch that with my brothers, and we dream about going to Disney. And so when I hit my teens and we lost my great aunt, she left some money for my folks. They paid off some business debt. They bought our first computer, and they took us to Disney World. When I went to Disney, I went, this is what I want to do. I want to create these special experiences and moments for people. What are these things called? And I looked it up, and it was they were called Imagineers. Was the mechanical and chemical and electrical engineers who sort of built the facilities that created these moments for people. And so I asked my high school counselor, how do I become one of these? And they said, well, you got to study engineering, which was math and science, which wasn't necessarily the part that kind of did the heavy lifting in terms of making a memorable moment for people.
Sure.
So I did 4 years of engineering, where I met my co-founders, Angus and Doug of Good Robot. We had a very a house of misfits, if you will. We had a lot of Queen's University students sort of looked a certain way, and we definitely didn't. We weren't the football team. We had friends on the football team, but we had the owners of the poutine shop and the bouncer at the nightclub and whatnot at our parties. Just a bunch of weirdos, like a nerdy Animal House.
Okay.
And fostered a real sense of camaraderie there. Did my master's in aeronautical engineering because I had no idea what to do. Did engineering for a few years. Didn't care for it. Was feeling sort of cold and alienated. And one day, Angus, one of the housemates, said, hey, me and Doug are thinking of quitting our jobs, starting a brewery in Halifax. And I said, I'm in. Which I don't think it was a formal invite, but I just...
Yeah, they're like, dude, we weren't inviting you.
I had gotten out of a bad Toyota meeting that day. It was like, yeah, fuck this. Let's do it. So I quit my job that week after talking to my parents, moved to Calgary to live with Angus, wrote the business plan for a year, moved to Halifax in 2014. We opened Good Robot in 2015. Excellent. And since then, we've been curating quirky beer experiences for our communities.
Yeah, excellent. They... So now currently, tell me a bit about, let's talk about the brewing company and your locations, and let's talk about that business a little bit. Let's zero in there.
Yeah, I think, Good Robot started as this, almost a fuck you to, not to any individual, but to a lifestyle that sort of lacked purpose, a culture that didn't have one, a sort of a vanilla existence. And so we just tried to make our culture and our guest experience with our brew pub, which is all we were up until COVID, was a single location brew pub. Okay. We just tried to make it as remarkable as possible and had a lot of fun doing it and got in a lot of trouble, got a lot of media attention for different things we could tap into later. And then when COVID hit and we were no longer allowed to physically gather together, it sort of challenged the whole ethos of our company, which was, built around camaraderie. And so we had a choice to either shrink or grow. And we decided to, rather than take a bunt to gently expand our facility, we went for the fences and built a world-class beverage manufacturing facility that could compete with Ontario and New York and so on and so forth in terms of innovation and export capacities and food and safety processes and so on and so forth. So we opened that. We raised the capital in 2021 for that. Built it in 22. It's about a $6 million build, maybe 20% private equity, the rest, funded by FCC and various banks. And then launched our services, which were beverage co-packing in 2023. So we make other companies' products. We can make soda. We can make energy drinks. We can make non-alcoholic wine and put it in a can. Pretty much if it's liquid in a can, we can make it. So that facility not only produces Good Robots beer that goes to our 3 hospitality venues, but also 40 other Atlantic and other clients around the globe who sell in Atlantic Canada or nearby.
Wow.
Yeah.
What gave you the idea to do that?
That was Angus's idea.
Okay.
Yeah. He saw a need in the market for it. You had all these wineries, breweries, distilleries, plus these startup brands, coffee brands, tea brands, the kind of people you see like go on Dragon's Den and pitch something. They all needed proper facilities that were a certain size, and it just didn't really exist. And it really didn't exist in the alcoholic space. Co-packing or contract brewing exists in every market across Canada. It wasn't really accessible in Nova Scotia in a meaningful way, or Atlantic Canada for that matter. So that was his vision, was to offer that and unburden those brands who needed to grow and didn't want to put in the capital, risk the farm, hire the people, deal with more HR headaches, and so on and so forth.
So is that in essence what, I'm not familiar with that industry. So is that a scenario where there is just this barrier to entry, or these economies of scale, it just can't be reached? And that's the idea. You guys are going, hey, look, you can only grow your beverage company so large before you're going to have to do this for yourself anyway. And the idea is, am I summarizing this correctly? The idea is, well, we can do it, and you guys turn to us and we'll take care of that aspect of your business.
Totally.
Okay.
You can either be starting out and say, I got this great energy drink called Sparkle Pop.
Okay.
Then Sobeys is interested, and I need a facility to make it. Most of our clientele is existing winning brands in Atlantic Canada who now need to innovate to do the next thing. So what I mean by that is, if there is if Costco wants an Atlantic Canadian, let's say a New Brunswick non-alcoholic cider, they have certain health and safety regulations that cider facility probably doesn't have, and would take them a lot of time and resources to invest in.
Okay.
Or they could just outsource it. And now they got a product that is being made over here, and it goes right to the grocery chain or Amazon or whomever, right? And it's their brand, but they're basically hands off from making it. Atlantic Canada classically is, if you think of the old fishing markets and whatnot here, so many businesses are run and owned by the producer, and it stops them from doing the really important piece, which is the selling and marketing, which is what founders of these products should be doing, is growing and developing the business.
Right.
Instead, they're trapped in a factory, or in a garage making these products at a small scale. I remember one of our prospective clients, I called on last Valentine's Day, 2024. And she said, I don't need your services. I said, what are you doing tonight for Valentine's Day? Oh, I'm working the packaging line. And I said, you're married, correct? Yeah, she's coming too. Right? So they're trapped making a product 7 days a week, right? And they go, I don't need help. So it's basically to enable them to get from behind it and grow it.
So the product itself, are all these products in cans or bottles? Am I correct?
All
in
cans,
assuming?
just aluminum cans. Yeah.
Okay. So all the products are in cans, and each company that might come to you, they already have a recipe, I guess, for whatever it is that they produce. And are you producing and manufacturing the liquid itself as well, or
We
just the
can.
packaging portion of it?
Both.
Okay.
So it's a really, it's a convoluted industry. It's so convoluted that certain co-pack businesses will actually charge to estimate because it takes so long to figure out
Sure.
what it's going to cost to make this thing. So it's kind of, wrap your head around that.
I can imagine.
You want to know the price? You got to pay for it. We don't do that, but it's not uncommon in our industry. The reason for that is that there's so many different variables and levels of involvement. Some people have an exclusive contract with some European supplier of this very specialty ingredient, and they want to supply that ingredient. So they'll supply that ingredient, and then we'll make the beverage and package it.
Okay.
We can make the beverage, we can package the beverage. But depending on the level of involvement, it might be full service, where all they do is write us a check and we do everything and ship it out the door, and then it's at their distributor.
Okay.
Or they might be much more hands-on, especially for people who are proud of their product and they're a smaller brand. It's kind of their baby, right? And they have a really hard time letting go of it.
So in that case, they may provide you with the liquid. Is that, am I correct in assuming? And you guys are packaging it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have developed recipes too.
Okay.
Sometimes they're very simple.
Right.
Ironically, we've found the easier something is to make, the more you can charge in the market for it. Beer is about the most complicated thing to make.
Sure.
And one of the worst in terms of margin, funny enough.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. It all comes down to the category and consumer perception. People are willing to pay, $70 for a bottle of wine.
Right.
They're not willing to pay that equivalent value for beer, even though it's more challenging and expensive to make and has more opportunities for failure.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Good Robot business itself, you mentioned that you've got 3 locations here, right?
Yeah. So we have Good Robot, if that's the sort of overhead.
Yep.
You've got the original hospitality arm of the company, kind of what put us on the map. That has 3 venues. Our original brew pub location in Halifax on Roby Street.
Right.
Then when we opened our factory in Elmsdale, Nova Scotia, that community kept coming in. I mean, they were literally walking into the factory or walking into meetings being like, what's going on here? What you building? Right? Violating every code conduct known to man. And they said, oh, you're building a bar. We've heard of Good Robot. We said, well, this is a 2-story, 15,000 foot facility. It's not a bar.
Sure.
But that community needed something to pull them together. I mean, they had one bar, Curly's. It went out of business during COVID. So we ended up, just to service that community, making a tiny little beer garden for them outside of the factory. It was not part of any kind of plan. We threw it together. It's a great little venue. It's one of my favorites to drink at. The people are wild. But, that's one of our venues. The third is at the Halifax Common.
Right.
So the big green space in the middle of Halifax. It's stunningly beautiful. Right next to Halifax Citadel. That is a seasonal beer garden. And yeah, it's gorgeous. The team did a great job with that one.
Are all locations, they're not all seasonal, obviously?
No. The original brew pub is a full service bar and restaurant operating year round.
Right.
The other 2 are seasonal beer gardens with stores.
Okay.
And then we also have our wholesale arm. So Good Robot, the beer brand.
Okay.
That is at Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation, Harvest Wines. You can buy it, for e-commerce delivery from Harvest Wines. We're in PEI Liquor Corporation, New Brunswick Liquor Corporation, Newfoundland now. So we're in all 4 Atlantic liquor corporations. Last summer, we had a brief stint at LCBO in Ontario, allegedly the world's largest purchaser and distributor of alcohol, along with Walmart, and export across Canada. So Alberta's a neat little market for us too. So you've got hospitality, 3 venues, wholesale, buy beer at a store, take it home, and then our co-packing facility, which makes the Good Robot beer that is sold wholesale and at our venues.
You got a lot going on.
Too much.
Yeah, you got a lot going on.
My head hurts.
How many, if we're just talking, because I know you have some other irons in the fire too, but on the Good Robot side of things, what size is this company? How many employees are we talking here roughly?
It's highly seasonal. Okay. So right now there's about 50.
Okay.
At peak summer, when all the beer gardens turn on, we're almost 100.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the three of you are still the owners of the entity?
RBC is the owner and our other lenders. Yeah, people say, are you the owner? I was like, yeah.
Sort of. Working toward
the founder.
Yep.
We founded it. We're still sort of the primary directors.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that shit belongs to the bank until we pay off that.
Like most people's houses until you get to a certain point. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it an asset?
Yeah. Sort of working toward it.
Yeah. Working toward it.
Well, that's good. So it's been 10 years ish, a little more than 10 years now.
Yeah.
2014.
Our 10th birthday will be May 9th.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
I mean, the failure rate we chose, we're not the brightest for a bunch of engineers. We chose 3 of the hardest verticals to compete in: hospitality, really high failure rates; consumer packaged goods, really high, even worse failure rates; and manufacturing. Strong barrier to entry, a lot of capital required to get started.
Yeah.
Process. I mean, it's just 3 slogs.
Right.
Every once in a while, I wish I could go back in time and learn financial services or something, or B2B marketing, and just work at an agency with very little overhead.
So what do you focus on? You personally, what aspect of the business would you be primarily focused on or most focused on in your world? Because obviously I know how the business works, and not everybody does everything. So
right.
What does day-to-day look like for you operationally? What do you focus on?
Yeah. If whoever's watching hasn't picked up that I have a hard time sitting still and paying attention, I redevelop my role, it seems like, every year. I don't leave the casino, but I switch slot machines.
Gotcha.
So last year I was heavily focused on co-pack sales, bringing in the brands, really holding people's hands through the process. In some cases, creating the product for them, or the concept or the vision for the product. So you make a distilled product, you make a rum, here's a little bit of consumer insights. Nova Scotia is known for rum and Coke. Trailer Park Boys, right? The whole thing. It's the top Google search associated with rum in Nova Scotia. Why is there not a single distillery making a rum and Coke in a can? So sometimes we actually pitch products to
Does anybody make rum and Coke in a can?
They do now.
Okay.
Yeah. But sometimes, it's like creating the business development and the sale and the marketing and everything for them, or at least the vision. We recreated cola.
Okay.
And it's delicious and deadly. But so a lot of that last year. This year, stepping back into a little bit of the marketing and hospitality side of things. It's sort of like if there was just a line of trees and there's monkeys sliding down each of them, you're kind of preventing that one from going all the way down and stopping that one, and just
gotcha.
Whatever one is closest to the ground, I'm there kind of wanting to back up.
Yeah, that's right.
As long as you don't let me near a balance sheet, I tend to do okay across the company.
Is one of the 3 original co-founders the person who likes to be around the balance sheet?
Yeah, Doug, one of the founders, was raised by a chartered accountant and worked for the Ministry of Environment. I mean, in terms of the admin side of things,
you got to have it. You want to have that person.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, 100%.
Take your eyes off the money; it's going to go away quick.
And we have a fractional CFO, right? Because it's one thing to be good with money. It's another thing to be good at communicating money. My buddy who runs a financial services agency said he went to an American-Canadian conference on estate planning. And he said the keynote said, Americans and Canadians are both bad at talking about death, but at least Americans can talk about money.
I had a conversation last week, and I was talking about how the client relationship works. And normally, sometimes, it could be even the first meeting that I have with folks that I've never met before. We sit down and we have to have a money conversation. So I've got to talk with these folks they've got to sort of lay it out there as to how much money they have and or want to spend, and And I've dealt with folks that are scraping it together to buy their first house, and I've built homes for folks that are just pull out a checkbook and write the check, and everywhere in between. But in my industry, you have to be willing to have the money talk with people really early on.
Oh yeah.
Right. If for no other reason, just to make sure that we're having a serious conversation, that we can line these things up. But I know what you mean. Yeah. Most people don't want to talk about money.
Well, and I know people who manage $1 million budgets who don't want to talk about their personal finance.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I know people who are strategic communications consultants who text me asking, how do I talk to my parents about their health and financial situation?
Sure.
It's funny, like when you switch hats, suddenly certain things go down the toilet.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you also do some keynote speaking. You want to fill me in on some of that and some of the and you also have, there's a marketing aspect to what you do as well, right? You have a focus on that as well. Obviously, your brand is important, right? Even the little bit of research that I've done before we had this conversation today. You guys have even your website, even just a Good Robot website is funky. It's got some personality. I like it. It's good. Yeah. So obviously, are you one of the masterminds behind that direction in general?
There was a period of time for the last couple of years where I let go.
Okay.
I do well with focus. I don't do well focusing on more than a handful of things. Mm-hmm. I like to obsess about one for a wind sprint of a period of time. But in terms of the original brand direction, it was one of those things that I think that there's the engineering side of me that's very analytical. And then there's the weird artsy side with the murder mystery family. And brand just sort of clicked early on for what it is and what it feels like and smells like and looks like. And it's something I've been obsessed with sort of since our inception, is what is a brand. And I think early on, I defined it as sort of the soul of the company,
sure,
which is nebulous, right? Mm-hmm. But people still kind of get it when you say it. Mm-hmm. It's not just what customers think, but what's your culture? Mm-hmm. What do people who hate you think of you? Very underrated. I used to say that brand is the 5 C's. And I can't remember if I pulled that from somewhere or what, but I said it was customers, community, critics. So people who are not customers, nor are they competitors.
Okay.
But they just don't like you.
Sure.
Sort of like a suburban mom talking about a skate kid or vice versa, right? They're going to have a pretty interesting and probably accurate definition of each other that the other doesn't want to hear.
Sure.
So I think critics are underrated, competitors, and culture. I think I got them all there. So a lot of what I'm doing on, I do have a little side hustle. It was just something to stretch the creative wings. And, I know this is an entrepreneurial podcast. I'm still paying off my student debt from, my engineering career. We have paid ourselves meager salaries to stabilize cash flow in our company. So if people are listening and, they're kind of entrepreneur curious, depending on the vertical you're going into, the industry, whatever, don't think that it's a moneymaker for a long time. It is a slow, horrible burn in a lot of ways. So the side hustle is to help pay off that personal debt and personal debt that's gone into the company as well. It's also a fun chance to flex the creative wings. Inadvertently, it sort of stemmed into keynote speaking.
Okay.
I think, it's sort of a natural fit based on my background, murder mysteries and whatnot. I loved public speaking as a kid. I never made the finals, the very, very final, like 1 or 2, but I always made the top sort of 5. And I kind of liked that. I didn't want to be Tony Robbins.
Sure.
I wanted to be more like Doug Stanhope.
Sure.
Or like Dave Attell, or like a stand-up comedian who, in certain situations, you see them in a comedy club and there's context to it, and that's it, right? It's not, this is for everyone. This is for people in a particular situation, sometimes not a good one.
Sure.
so the keynote speaking, I like to have sort of my own style, and I don't like making it too much about, here's the way I helped the client. It just feels unnatural to me. It's more like, here's some shit I struggled with, right? And here's what the end result was. And I don't really have a takeaway for you in terms of this framework will work for you. You know, make your own conclusion.
That's right. Yeah.
This is just shit that happened. And here's the end result.
Yeah.
And it seems to work out really well.
That's good.
Yeah.
It takes, I mean, obviously public speaking is not everybody likes it. Most people don't like it. You're a rare case to enjoy public speaking.
Yeah.
I never had any problem with public speaking. I mean, even in school, it's
Right.
that certainly never bothered me. I don't mind public speaking now, clearly. I mean, this is what we're doing.
Sure.
This is what we're doing here now. The difference being that there's no immediate audience, but we know they're out there. But yeah, you and I would have some commonalities there for sure, and some similarities in the fact that I also like to put forth my advice and add my 2 cents on whatever the conversation may be. And I have lots of, I've got 20 years of self-employed entrepreneurial business experience, good and bad decisions, things I did correctly, things I wish I didn't do. But I would never stand up and say, hey, listen, I got business all figured out. Listen to me and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'd be much like you. I might say something along the lines of, entrepreneurial business ventures are not for everybody. If you're not highly motivated, highly driven, thick-skinned, all those things. And again, my exposure is limited to the construction and real estate development business. But throughout that process, there are a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs in the Maritimes, and I've built lots of homes for many of them. So I always like having that conversation with them, get some different perspective. I know exactly what you mean by you'd like to be in the top 5, but you're not necessarily looking to be the person that, is looking to win the public speaking contest, just to be considered.
I couldn't be a politician.
You might have won in some people's minds, though.
Sure.
Right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing I'll add about the entrepreneur piece, something from my psychologist, Dr. Conrad, critical pain tolerance. An ability to withstand pain for long periods of time.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a big one.
And stress.
Oh, yeah.
And stress. Like I have, I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times through the years somebody would say something along these lines to me of, I don't know how you can just shake that off, or how you're not stressed out all the time, or whatever it might be. And I'm thinking, well, it's not that I'm not stressed. I don't wear it on my sleeve like that, but I have a very high tolerance for stress, very, very high tolerance for stress.
Right.
And you have to in the construction business in general, but real estate industry and ups and downs and market crashes and 2008s and all these things that go on, you get thick skin. But in business, I think really all successful business owners and entrepreneurs are going to be thick skinned, high level of tolerance, high threshold for pain.
Yeah.
Unless unless they're that tiny little fraction of people that just fluke into this winning thing that falls in front of them. But I mean, that's so rare. It's like winning the lottery.
Very rare. And it's not necessarily a good asset. It is just like anything. It has pros and cons.
Right.
So many entrepreneurs. I mean, I'm a member of Wallace McCain Institute, so I got an entrepreneurial forum, not unlike entrepreneur organization. So many are so good at suffering that it just becomes the norm with no sort of reason to pull themselves out of it. They're just so used to it. It's almost as if the stasis of familiarity of pain is better than the risk of pursuing freedom or happiness. It's such a strange phenomenon. Humans are so adverse to change by nature.
Yeah, you're right.
Devil we know.
That's right.
What are some of you mentioned earlier, I can't remember what you framed it as. You said some shit I wish I didn't do, or some hard lessons learned.
Oh, I mean, I've owned, I bought one business in my time, and I've owned anything else I've owned and I've started from the beginning. So I currently own or have owned, let's say, a dozen-ish companies over the years.
Damn.
Yeah, well, and they're all related. They're all sort of real estate, development, construction. I owned a small electrical company for a period of time. I owned a small plumbing company one time, and it was because at that time the guy who I really liked was a great plumber, He was a terrible business person. And he was basically about to, he had basically called me and said, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to be your plumber anymore because I just can't do this. I can't run the business and be the plumber. And it's hard finding help and all these things. I said, listen, let's meet. And we talked about it and so on. And what we circled back to was, okay, I'll help you take care of the business part so that you can focus on being a plumber. And then I did the same thing with a couple of guys who were electricians. But they didn't pan out. In both cases, yours truly just ended up losing some money. I bought a business years ago that was already it was a business that was much older than my existing business even at the time. It had been around for a couple of decades. What I learned in that experience was, first of all, what I learned was to look more closely at the financials, I guess, before you pull the trigger on buying any businesses. And it's not that I didn't look. I had several different, I had my accounting firm check it out, my accountant, and then another firm give me a second opinion, and my bookkeeper at the time had looked over. But it's just what I learned. I learned a number of things there, but one of them was financials and numbers on the paper don't tell the story of the business, right? I mean, they tell the financial story of the business. But if I had that to do over again, I would have spent some time physically walking around talking to everybody who worked at the business. I would have talked to the administrative staff and the manager staff and the guys holding shovels and operating machinery. I would have talked to them all and got a sense of what they thought about the business being sold to somebody else and how happy they were and so on. Anyway, long story short, what ended up happening there was I essentially bought a business but still continued to operate my other businesses, and I was wearing too many hats, but I didn't have the cooperation of the management at the company, and there was a resentfulness there, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like, who's this guy? Right?
Yeah.
And
I've seen that.
I didn't have any. There was none of them ever owned a business. None of these people ever owned a business, but they were good at this job that they did for this company. But they also all seemed to have a bit of an attitude where they knew better than I knew, and that's fine, except it's my fucking money, right? So we're going to do what I said at the end of the day, but that just, and it's not that I had that approach with them, but what I found toward the end of it is that was kind of the sentiment, after several years. Eventually I sold it and walked away and took my kick in the nuts and went in the other direction, right? And live and learn. But I've never ventured into anything outside of what I knew, but the business that I'm in, I didn't know before I started. So I learned all of this as well. Much like yourself, I just quit my job and started doing something else, and just, I had a business, university Bachelor of Commerce. I had a business degree, so I wasn't completely ignorant to business, but my family didn't come from a business background. I didn't have any personal experience that way, but at one point I just went home from work one day, told my wife, quit my job. I'm going to go get a real estate license. And then I had a real estate license, and I said, we're going to start building a few houses. And I built a house, and then I built another one, and then it just turned into what it is now. I still carry a real estate license because it's a tool. It's like
Sure it is, yeah.
It gives you access to things you can't otherwise access because the real estate industry is highly governed in this province, right? The Nova Scotia Real Estate Commission and even the Association of Realtors and so on. Like, just being in that group is important because it gives you access to things you can't otherwise get. But also I've made a tremendous, I've met a tremendous number of really successful people who I wouldn't have otherwise met if I wasn't in this industry. And some of them been in it longer than I have, and you learn some things from them, and then, so it's good. I probably, at some point I'll probably let my real estate license expire when it becomes, I think, okay, well, I'll never need it anymore. But I buy and sell a lot of property, outside of just the homes that we build. I buy land and I develop land and I sell things. So it's just easier for me to have access to things, dealing with even commercial properties and things. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting but that was a time where, when I had purchased that other company, and at that point I had probably collectively 50 employees, probably similar to your low season number. And one thing I realized at that point was, maybe I'll ask you this question first. If you had to point to one aspect of being a business owner that you like the least, what do you think it would be? Let me start. Let me start in case you think it's something similar. The
Sure.
part of owning a business owner that I like the least is being an employer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean the HR aspect of it.
Right.
Because I have a very sort of practical, pragmatic outlook on life and my relationship in working with people. From an employer's perspective, when I hire someone to do a job, I just want them to come do the job and be qualified to do it, of course, and I'll help you to the best of my ability and give you the tools that you need. And then I just want you to do the job. And then my role as the employer is to make sure that you have a safe work environment. You have all the tools you need, and an area where you can come work and flourish. And then your job as an employee is to do your job.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get into like the HR side of things, at that point I'm like, look, I don't want to do HR. For instance, it could be small things like if any of my employees come to me and say, hey, it just heads up, I've got a dentist appointment or something tomorrow. Thanks for the heads up, but I'm never going to say, oh, well, I don't know. You come in the
Sure.
next day. I'm not counting hours. I don't operate that way. And that would be a hindrance for me if I ever wanted to, which I don't, but if I ever wanted to grow my business and it meant more and more employees, that's one aspect I would absolutely have to step back from. And I'd have to hire an HR person and say, listen, you got to deal with this stuff because, I'm not good at it. I'm kind of too easygoing on some things. I'm probably not doing other things correctly. And, so you handle the HR part and I'll just go build houses and buy land and develop land and whatever we do. But, I'm heavily involved I'm basically the front man of the sales and marketing side of things. Not that we do a tremendous amount of marketing, but when folks come in, we build a custom home for them. I'm going to be the person sitting at the table selling, quote unquote, selling them the house.
Totally.
I don't really sell people the house. I would say I more so sell them on the service that we're going to provide as the builder. But I handle that. And I don't do it because I do it for two reasons. One, because I was in the real estate business and I've been in that community for 20 plus years. I'm good at talking with people, and the home building process is entirely different. We have such a long customer relationship with these folks. It's many, many months on end. From the time we first meet them until the time they move in, it could quite literally be years. Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty good at talking with people and building some rapport. And if nothing else, they'll leave and think, ideally, hopefully they'll think, geez, I'd like to do business with that guy. Seems like a pretty honest dude. Or they might leave and think, fuck, guy's a dick. Okay, that might be the 1%, maybe.
The critic.
Right, the critic, right. But I enjoy that part. And I probably will never step away from that entirely.
Sure.
Because it also equates so much to, I get a chance at that point to also somewhat interview the people that we're going to be building for, so that I know what I'm subjecting my staff to if we take these folks on. Because it's you got to know what you're in for. You're setting realistic expectations. You can make sure that you nip a few things in the bud before they start to snowball away and so on. But the HR side of it is, it's just a challenge for me. Like I don't like keeping track of that stuff, right? I just want everyone, you keep track of your own personal life. Mm-hmm. And if it's anything employment related, of course, by all means, bring it to me. But other than that, listen, we all manage our own lives. I don't want to count vacation days and those things. Here's how much vacation you get. You guys track it down. Let me know if there's a problem, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would assume probably have an HR person or HR people, but small business people, even in like the sub-trade world that we deal with, electricians and plumbers and drywall guys, it's tough, man. I see it every day. I've always said, and I still say, if anyone out there is listening and they're looking for a business idea, if you are somebody who has a strong financial background and good management skills, time management, and organizational skills, and you want to offer your services to sub-trades or tradespeople who own their own small business, but they need someone to manage the business side of it for them, the market is huge. You got to reach these guys and communicate with them. But if you could take the bookkeeping, banking, business decision, HR stuff, take that all off their plate and let them go be an electrician. And then that's where they make their money, right? They don't make their money managing the other three guys that work for them trying to keep them busy or organizing where they're going, or coming home on the weekend and trying to do their payroll or their invoicing. If you could take that from people and manage it correctly, and there's different ways you could do that, of course, like pay-as-you-go services or different packages you could offer. I mean, there's a real thing there. There's a real thing there that is lacking.
Yeah.
Because our entire industry in the residential industry is almost entirely contractor and subcontractor relationships, or, contractor and tradespeople relationships. And these guys here don't have a lot of representation.
No.
They're normally going it alone. Yep. And they're out there all day in the, installing siding or pulling wires through a house or running an excavator or whatever they're doing. But as you know, there's a business aspect. You got to come back here and make sure your HST is paid and get your invoicing done and all those things. And these guys aren't necessarily equipped to do that. So they manage to the best of their abilities, but I normally see it on the other end where it's not being managed correctly.
And they don't trust finance people. They wouldn't trust a fractional CFO or whatnot.
Right.
But if there's somebody listening and they want a good business idea in addition to the one you just mentioned, our contractor who's built our bars, services the factory, drops bombs every week of good ideas. Just go talk to a contractor because stuff doesn't stop getting physically built. And there's always shortages on niche things.
That's right.
The most recent one in Nova Scotia for him was, oh man, I wish there was more locksmiths in Halifax.
Right.
8-week lead time.
Is that right? Yeah.
He said, go learn it for 2 years and it's a 6-figure business. It's not sexy. It's not fun, right? But most business isn't.
Yep.
Just go do the thing. In 2 years, you'll be an expert. Lose money for 2 years learning it.
Yep.
We've our sales manager, who's also a realtor, by the way, never stops hustling. He's got a Ukrainian family he adopted living with him. Again, never stops moving, this guy. The Ukrainians were cleaning gutters for a company. They didn't like their boss. My sales manager, Mercer, taught them how to start a business in Canada. They now run their own gutter cleaning service.
That's great.
It's going extremely well.
Yeah.
Right?
It's great.
Is it sexy? No. That's the thing with, a lot of the entrepreneurial endeavors that you see sort of promoted on social media are all these, content creators who are reporting from a yacht. And it's like, that's awesome. I'm happy somebody found one that's sexy, but I had one solopreneur who's a marketing consultant. She said, are there any boring industry entrepreneurial endeavors that are awesome or that are really, really smart? And what I wanted to kind of reply was, most of them. like you're in a very, very small category.
Right. Yeah.
Of, the fun freelancer who gets to travel all the time and, now I'm writing a blog from Italy.
Right.
Good for you. I'm envious. Not going to lie. I think it's freaking awesome. I want to get to that point. But that is this, and meanwhile, the company that picks up our garbage from the bar, that dude is swearing his face off in our alley. Son of a bitch, motherfucker. You hear him every month. And then on the weekends, I see him in a Beamer.
Sure.
Because nobody wants to pick up trash.
Sure. That's right.
And he told me he's going to Greece for 6 weeks.
Yeah. We see the same thing in definitely in the construction industry. I see it all the time. You see, and there are certain trades that are difficult to find and becoming more and more difficult to find. And the heavier the lifting, and the harder the work, physically hard work, the more difficult it is to find people to do it. It's not easy work. No. And I could say the same thing about any number of trades. There are certain trades that everybody defaults to. So, people think, I'm going to be an electrician or a plumber or
welding's big.
Yeah. But then you have these other things like it's relatively simple work, like say for instance, siding installation.
Right.
It's not complicated.
No.
But like anything, you got to learn how to do it properly. But if you went and got a job working with a guy banging siding on a house, and you spent a year working for this person, and you paid attention, and you worked hard, and you learned the tricks of the trade, and then a year later you said, I'm going to go do this on my own. And if you committed to, listen, I'm going to get up at a reasonable hour every morning. I'm going to be on the job site with the gear rolled out, operating by even 8 a.m. Let's not even go extreme. Let's just say at 8 a.m. each morning you're working, and you don't roll up that gear until 4 p.m. You put in 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, you will absolutely be making 6 figures. you couldn't not, right? You could not. And you'll be turning away work. And if anybody thinks I'm bullshitting them, then contact my office and I have a job for you.
Totally.
Right?
Here's one for you. Porta potties. Shortage of those for the events coming back online post-COVID. Here's another one. Emptying old school friggin' drainage systems. What do you call them? The friggin'
Septic tanks?
Yeah, thank you. Septic tanks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Cleaning out the shit box.
Clean out the shitters, yeah.
Angus, my co-founder, did it over Christmas at Cape Breton. I mean, the woman comes up, hey, how you lads doing? Right? She's sucking the shit, right? They had to use, it got dried. She had to use shit from the previous house to push into the tank to get it. I mean, it's foul work. She's going to Dominican for 2 months.
Sure.
In the winter.
Sure.
Right? She's running that shit.
That's sure.
That's
the
stuff.
The other thing that's interesting about that is that all those things that you're talking about, the guy picking up the garbage, the person cleaning out the septic tank, the guy installing siding, that work all has to get done.
Yeah.
Right? So even with all of the technology that's in the world and AI and these things that we're all talking about, we're a long way from septic tanks pumping themselves out.
Correct.
Or siding nailing itself on the house, right? So
Yeah.
this is, if you got into this business now and you're a 25-year-old man or woman, you say, you know what, I'm going to go into whatever business. You got a lifetime of work there. That's not going away, right?
Yeah.
Manual labor, certain aspects of manual labor are not going away, especially stuff built or done on site that you got to go to it, right?
Totally. Yeah.
But again, it's not necessarily easy work, but if you could do it and you can get a good thing going, and then if you grow your business naturally, you say, okay, now I'm going to hire someone to help me, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time perhaps tracking down more business if need be, or whatever the case may be. But what I would say, going back to what I said 10 minutes ago, if you feel like, okay, I'm ready to grow my business beyond just me, then unless you're well equipped to deal with the finances and you have a little background in perhaps accounting or financial management, or even just the accounting software, then get a bookkeeper, one you can trust.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'll tell you, that is a tough thing to find, man. Good bookkeepers are hard to find, especially for small business people, because you don't have a full-time bookkeeping job there. You may have it's a one-day job, or it's 2, 3, 5 hours a week, something like that when you start out. So even when I look for a bookkeeper, it's somebody that I have to be one of their clients. And that's pretty common in the construction industry. The bookkeepers have multiple clients. And so if you have a good bookkeeper, hang on to them to the best of your abilities. I have a good one now, which is great.
We do too.
I had a good one years ago, and she left and started a family, and that's great. And then I went through a few others and landed on a good one now, and I'm happy to have her because she does a good job. But I also know a number of guys that over the years that have been stolen from by their bookkeepers because they don't know how to keep an eye on their own finances, and they give their bookkeeper, complete control. Yeah. They give them signing authority. They give them access to their bank account.
Totally.
And I know 2 guys that have had over $100,000 stolen from them.
Yeah.
From 2 different bookkeepers.
$100K.
Yeah, $100,000.
Jeez. Yeah, the nerve of taking $100K.
Oh yeah, I remember when this one particular story. This guy that told me how it went down and how much money it was. And I'm like, man, first thing I said to him was, how the fuck did you let that happen? Right? How do you go a year and not look at your own bank account, right? Or however long it was. I'm like, what is the matter with you, man? Why would you give somebody who you don't really know that well, they just friend of a friend kind of thing, you give them full access to your bank account? Would you do that in your personal life? Would you do that? Hey man, here's my debit card.
I would, but I'm stupid. That's why I don't go near the financial side.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, man. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen a couple of times.
Jeez. What's the strangest, doesn't even have to be a scam, but just the strangest thing you could think of that's happened in your business career? Just a real out of left field.
Yeah, I've had lots of weird interactions related to construction, the construction industry. Right?
I can only imagine.
There's quite a range of people in the construction industry.
Oh yeah, well
like a huge range. I mean, I've had people that have worked for me who came from prison to this is their first job. They came to the construction industry. I don't know. Don't quote me on this. We could Google it, but it's got to be way up there with the percentage of people who have criminal records.
You heard it here, folks.
Or has spent time
You
in
heard it
prison,
here.
right? I have employed several of them over the years.
Yeah, naturally.
You know, I don't, depending on what they were there for, I wouldn't hire somebody who I thought was going to be a danger to the people around them. But people make mistakes. People fuck up.
Yeah, of course.
Right? They learn their lesson. They do their time. And if they come and as a result, and as it turns out, they're a great worker, then I don't care. I don't pry into their past any more than I would anybody else. But there's quite a range, man. There's quite a range of people from, on any given day, I could talk to somebody who didn't finish 7th grade and then have a conversation later that day with a surgeon here in the office who we're going to build a home for. So you got to sort of change your hats a little bit. Right? Yeah.
Have you ever been fired?
No.
I got fired from a construction job.
Did you?
Yeah. The foreman said, "Don't sweat it. We fire every student." It was a summer gig. But the alleged reason was not being able to sort of keep up physically.
Yeah.
And which was funny because there was a lot of guys on that job that dicked around. But I think it was good. It's good to fail a course or two. I think I failed 3. Mm-hmm. It's good to fail. It's good to get fired. Kind of forces you to take, first you blame everything else and whatnot, and then you kind of take a hard look at yourself and go, all right, maybe I was a little slower than the rest of the guys. But construction was, I mean, you're right. It was such a crazy array of convicts, 5th grade education, PhD who decided he didn't want to do that anymore, want to do more hands-on stuff, former CEO, just like a smattering. And
retired military folks, retired police officer. Yeah, I've had everything. I've had all that.
Rain Man level genius. Yeah. Just across the board. The connective tissue is beer and swearing. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of how to get through it. But what a weird industry, and an industry that. So I was an engineer when I went from aeronautical engineering to more trades-based construction engineering. You had the engineer out of college, young 20-something who didn't know shit. Mm-hmm. He knew math, had never built anything, had never managed anyone. And he's sort of implicitly higher in the food chain than the tradesperson who has been doing nothing but sheet metal for 35 years. Right. And so they hated us by nature. Mm-hmm. But because I didn't know shit about construction, I would go to them. The problem always gets solved on the front line, whether it's the employees or the customers, but like going to the source. And I was designing ducts for the Talisman Center in Calgary, which is Canada's largest Olympic gym. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was completely out in the middle of nowhere. And this guy, every second word out of his mouth was, "God damn it, son of a bitch," whatever. He just, walked me through the duct process. Right, 35 years. All I had to do was listen to him, which is all he really kind of wanted these, young snooty engineers to do.
Yeah, sure.
Was not come in with a blueprint, say that's what we're doing, and he's going, "That's a dumb idea," right? And he just bought him a beer, hung out with him, and it's like, "Oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'll just stamp that."
Yeah, I can definitely relate to what you're saying there. In my industry, where we run into that is a very similar thing, where we have it's kind of these 3 different entities. You kind of have the architects, the engineers, and then the contractors, the builders.
Yeah.
And I build homes for folks that I design and we build. And we need to engage engineers from time to time when it comes to the things about the home that have to be engineered. But I don't go to them and say, "How do I do this?"
Right.
Simply, quite frankly, I don't build homes that I don't know how to build.
Right.
Right. But 99% of the homes that are built fall under the umbrella of things that I can do. I've never had any interest in dealing with the new construction world that involves architects and engineers and builders and the client, and we're all having meetings and sitting around tables and opening things up, because the bit of experience that I have had in that sense, a bit similar to your story. What I get is I've had experience where the architect will say, "Here you go, build this," and I'll go, "How? what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Right? This is like a home that looks like it's in Southern California. How do you want me to do this? Right? Doesn't happen very often, but once in a while, I'll get somebody who will contact us to say, hey, we're looking for a builder. We have our plans drawn. Our architect's already. As soon as they say the word architect, like the volume's turning way down in my brain. I'm going, okay, not interested. Right. And I'm sure it's a lovely home, and I'm not, and obviously I'm not shitting on architects. I mean, they have a skill set. I just don't.
100%.
I just don't. It's not my space. There's a market for that. It's not a huge market for that anyway in the Maritimes. Most of the builders who play in that space are commercial contractors.
Yeah.
Because then they have their own architects and engineers and so on staff.
Yeah.
Right. If I have to engage engineers every time I need an answer to something, and I'm getting a bill for $300 an hour or whatever it is, it's not going to work. Plus, we build turnkey new construction. So when we build a home for someone, we say, here's the contract and all the details, and here's the price, and it's guaranteed. It's not going to change unless they change the scope of the project themselves. Here it is in 12 months' time or 8 months' time, whatever it is. This is the number. The more custom stuff normally comes in like a costs plus type of scenario where it's the contractor will build it and it's a pass through and they add their 15 or 20% or whatever it is, their markup. And don't get me wrong, these buildings need to be designed by architects and engineers. They need to, because these things have to look a certain way, and they're fantastic. I mean, I have a tremendous appreciation for them. Normally I see them like, oh, thank God I didn't have to build that.
I'm flabbergasted when I look at something that's beautifully designed and I go, I know what you're talking about, rebar and concrete, and then it's a brick, and you could put a brick on another brick, and now you got 2 bricks. Nice. Right. But when I look at one that has wavy walls, and the sun reflects off of it and it makes a mosaic of a famous artist or something, I just go, wow, that is some avant-garde level architecture. That's where their genius comes in, right?
For sure.
It's like, not only how could you think of that, but how could you even put it into a drawing that has an ability to be tangibly translated to something physical? For sure. That stuff is just mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have a huge appreciation for that. I agree with you. It's like, I mentioned this in the last conversation I had, that the older I get, I'd like to think you're getting wiser, but the older I get, the more I appreciate people who have skill sets that I don't have. So when I see things like, wow, that's amazing. That people, and it could be anything from physical feats,
anything
like Olympians and athletes, to people who design buildings, and all of that. I look at that. I have a greater appreciation for the shit that I don't know how to do.
And really anything with passion. Yeah. There's like passion for anything. I don't care if it's toilet paper, politics, whatever. But, I had lunch with my buddy who is a founder of a design architecture firm. They have transitioned away from a lot of hospitality and whatnot, which isn't a moneymaker, into premium homes for retirement communities, premium retirement facilities. Right. All that boomer wealth, right, that is so dormant. Yeah, sure. And, assisted living and retirement communities and whatnot have long been thought of as just kind of a turd. Right. And it's like, how can that be when so many of these people have so much money, and now they are making these incredible facilities that are stunning. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Boomers hang on to their money though. Oh my God. They hold on to it pretty tight. Right? We build a lot of homes for a lot of boomer aged folks, and and oftentimes they have lots of money, but they didn't get that money by making stupid decisions either. They're good with their money and they manage it correctly, but young people throw their money around a lot more. Well, absolutely. Than the boomers do, for sure. Part of the reason that Atlantic Canada is so hard for entrepreneurship is dormant capital. People holding on to money, and Canada in general, like in consumer packaged goods, midday squares. Those little, I don't know if you've heard of them. They're trying to take on the afternoon snack market. Okay. With kind of a protein-filled, fiber-filled, but still tasty, whatever. Okay. They're great little things. They're sold in the refrigerated section, which kind of already differentiates a little bit. Right. They are they are doing very well, scaling very quickly. 80% of their sales are in Canada, 20% the US. 80% of their capital comes from the US, 20% Canada. Oh, really? Their funders are Americans. Yeah. Because Americans are more risk tolerant. Yeah. Right? Willing to take bigger swings and whatnot. I remember Jim Watson, the mayor of Ottawa, when I lived there, got on the radio and gave kind of an almost state of emergency type situation address where he said, listen, there is so much money in this town and you're just sitting on it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't support local businesses. You go to the Cancun for Christmas or whatever. You buy foreign cars.
Mm-hmm.
You're not doing anything to support your local economy except own homes, which is, we hear time and time again what Canada's economy is built on, is mortgages.
Yeah.
Right? So the money just goes to Netflix. The money goes to Amazon. The money goes to, Disney World. It doesn't go to regional experiences. It doesn't go to regional manufacturing.
Yeah.
And there, and then the rest of it just sits in assets. Yeah. But not necessarily Canadian ones other than housing.
Yeah, sure.
To American companies. It's just...
And I mean, the fact that housing has become so expensive here too is, has become a challenge, especially over the last say 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Like I've been in the industry for more than 20 years now, and you always have that constant upward movement of pricing with a few little, especially in the Maritimes, we don't get really high, dips. We don't get super high or super low at any point, and then COVID hit and it was like something we had never seen before. I'm always more equally amazed at how many people and how much money people are willing to spend that they don't have. Like in other words, how much debt people are willing to take on for especially depreciating assets and fun times and things that are spent now and then the money's gone and you're still paying it for 5 years.
Yeah.
I was never one to do that. It's, like yourself, when I graduated from university, when I first started my business, I was, tens of thousands of dollars in the hole with student loan debt. And so my first thing was, okay, well, I got to get rid of this. And then when I get rid of that, then you can take on good debt, business debt. But since then I'm a bit like kind of old school in my mentality when it comes to that. I would love to have the bank out of my life. I would just love to have the banks out of my life, but next to impossible to do that if you're trying to be a business owner or grow a business. I mean, you know how it is. It's like you said earlier, anyone that has $6 million in cash laying around or whatever it costs you guys to build your facility, they're probably not building the facility. They're probably doing something else. Yeah. Right? $2 million. It's a lot of work for what you're doing for you guys to do that, right? It's a grind.
It's a grind, big barrier to entry. Yeah. And all it takes is a billionaire from China to come in and absolutely stomp us.
That's right. Yeah, sure.
Not saying that's probable. Yeah. Right. But what happens with entrepreneurs, and I know this because I do marketing consulting for a financial services agency, is, and I see this, business owners open a coffee shop, they build a market on this corner, they pay themselves meagerly for 10 years, creating this community, this thing that people want. As soon as it is in demand and there's no more pull than they can service, in slot Starbucks next door and eats their pie. And the owners didn't sort of pay themselves enough. They didn't structure the company in such a way to protect it from the creditors, from the lenders. Right. For when inevitably they go bankrupt. Right. And they didn't take enough money out from it. For future me and for any aspiring entrepreneurs on the podcast, 10 years, 10th birthday coming up, plus the time pre-planning the business. Sure. And I'm still paying off student loans, right? At almost age 40. I'm not wealthy yet. I will be wealthy. I'm confident in that. That's, but today, the very real reality of this thing is you take on a tremendous amount of risk, right? And very little guarantee that it's going to pay off. So, be forewarned that it's a slog. Yeah. And try to talk to a financial advisor early.
Yeah, sure.
Because I find my generation, you're right, very consumerist, very impulsive. I'm the worst case scenario. That entire snack aisle at the cash is built for me, right? I have to close my eyes when I walk by a bakery. And I love every bad thing, cigars and booze and gambling and all the fun stuff. To move away from that impulse and to start thinking about taking that money, putting it away wherever you can, pulling that out of the business, getting your mind frame around you can be wealthy. I know so many millennials who have given up before they've started, who make good money, really good money, proportionally even way more than their parents did. And they probably won't be as wealthy as their parents were. Sure. Who might have worked at Giant Tiger. Sure, yeah. But they put away.
They're more frugal.
They're more frugal, right? And and that whole thing.
Yeah.
So I just, again and again, with my employees, with my friends, they're just like, oh, I can never be wealthy. I can never, the boomers have all the money. I'm like, you make $100K a year.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Sure. Yeah.
But they've mentally created this barrier of it's not for me and it never was.
Yep.
That doesn't have to exist.
No, I agree. And it's, well, it's like you said earlier, and especially depending on their skill set and the type of work that they want to do, but there are endless opportunities out there for people to do work, for businesses they could start, for new ventures they could take on, even for, God forbid, a second business or a little side gig that they might get going that they could generate a little extra money. But you hear it all the time where not the first person to say this, of course, but you hear people who say, you got to have a plan and you should write it down. You got to set goals for yourself and all these things. I was never one to do that. I didn't.
Sure.
And I didn't physically stand in front of the mirror every day and say, I'm a good person. I'm going to be rich. I didn't do that shit. I didn't write down my goals.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I don't think that's a good idea. I think for some people that absolutely would be a good idea.
Sure.
'Cause I know myself is, I'm a checklist guy though, for sure. Like everything I have to do every day is in my calendar. I rely heavily on my calendar. Because if I don't, I'll forget about it. It could be anything. It could be something simple as drop this off or pick that up or call this guy.
Yeah, I have 15 Google calendars.
Yeah. Everything's in my calendar, man. I don't rely on my memory to for the things I have to accomplish each day or appointments and things I have coming up. I could never do that. I could never do that because I'm always doing multiple things at one time.
Yep.
Like even if I'm just sitting at my desk in front of my PC and I'm working on something, somebody will walk in, I'll drop that, I'll focus on this for a second, then they'll walk back out and the phone will ring and I'll focus on that for a second. I could never keep track of it all without a calendar.
No.
One of the first things I'll ask somebody if I'm interviewing them, for a job, because I do all the interviews, is because, I love doing the HR stuff. Right. But one of the first things I'll ask them is like, how do you organize yourself? And I mean, literally, how do you organize your day, your week, how do you make sure you don't miss something or forget something, whatever? And for anyone that's listening, if you ever come in for an interview, I want to hear you tell me that you physically put it in writing somewhere. Mm-hmm. I don't care if it's, a calendar or notes on your iPhone, whatever it is, but tell me you write it down, unless you tell me you got a photographic memory or something, but
totally
it doesn't happen very often, right?
No.
But I get satisfaction out of, I know this sounds weird, I get satisfaction out of taking them off my calendar.
Oh my God.
Right? I did that. Even stupid shit, just nothing. I just like seeing them disappear off my calendar.
The little mark completed button on Google reminders.
Absolutely, man. I love that.
Love it too.
Man, you get these little wins all day long. You're getting these little wins.
Totally.
I did it, right?
I try to find my dopamine from shit like that because the payoff for running your own business is such a long game.
Sure it is.
It's so much restraint there. So talking about stuff on social media and then tuning in and being like, hey, they like that. That's how I'm getting my little interim rushes, marking the checklist complete.
Yeah.
I try to gamify the stuff just to give me a little bit of that extra hit of recognition.
Yeah.
Like that you did something.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's an insanely grueling long game.
Yeah, and sometimes I find if you don't do that, you might go, you spend all day, you're just like head down, working your ass off all day long, and at the end of the day, it's a good way for you to measure, that you accomplished some things,
Sure.
even if they're tiny little things, right?
Any I know people hate the term, but moving the needle in any kind of way.
Sure.
You didn't have to finish planning the event.
Sure.
You didn't have to finish the taxes, but did you at least email the accountant?
Yeah, that's right.
Did you at least create the template for a budget?
Mm-hmm.
Just some kind of action. Oh man, that's the cure for anxiety and the cure for dormancy.
You have, in your experience with other entrepreneurs and business owners and people that you've chatted with, is there any sort of commonalities that you see from a personality perspective that you find as a common thread? Because I know a number, like yourself, I know many different business owners and entrepreneurs who are entirely different people, like completely different, political views and cultural views and outlooks on the world and personalities, introverts and extroverts. So that's all over the place. But do you find anything that you would say seems to be relatively common across the board with the people that are successful when it comes to that?
Yeah, I find there's very few Richard Bransons and Donald Trumps. There's very few big personalities.
Sure.
most of them are quite humble and kind of meek
Right.
about themselves. About their business, way too grandiose.
Sure.
Like a very inflated perception for how important their business is. And, you know, the thing that I get concerned by is similar to young athletes where they put all the chips in one category, right? And then they break their ankle and their entire self-esteem, their entire self-worth is gone.
Right.
Putting all your chips into one thing, your business versus your family, community, travel, you know, what wisdom, whatever it is, spirituality, you know, if you want to go that direction. I mean, avoiding creating that single tower that is wobbly,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
And trying to create more of a cityscape with balanced things. Such a danger for entrepreneurs, such a danger for athletes, especially like power lifters and whatnot, my doctor was saying. But I find that to be a very common trait. Meek in their personality, delusional in their perception of how important their business is.
Okay, so let's go back to that question I asked you. If you have something about being a business owner, entrepreneur that you like the least, could be operational or just in general. Anything that comes to mind?
And two things immediately come to mind. One is sort of piggybacking off what you said earlier about once upon a time I was a good manager. I'm not anymore. You know, a lot of employees and friends and whatnot say, you've got great emotional intelligence. And I agree. I don't have very good emotional execution, right? I know conceptually how to design a house,
Sure.
but I can't hang a picture. So I'm moody, I'm temperamental, I get, you know, easily triggered and lose my shit over dumb things. That's not who you want as a manager. I can't hold a lot of monkeys on my back.
Sure.
I appreciate that where we are as a business is in a place where I have better managers than I was, because I just don't have the ability to execute in an emotionally compassionate way, two ways, right? Both dealing with directorship or leadership who kind of top down stuff goes to the managers, and also coming from the people that are reporting to them.
Sure.
That's a lot of monkeys to hold on your back. So I'm happy that we're at a place where I don't have to manage her. That's one of my slot machine switches in the last 2 years.
Yeah. And
But there is a period of time where you are involved in all the hard conversations with employees.
For sure.
You already have enough hard conversations with clients, customers, the banks, shareholders, you know, your founders, right? It's nice to not have to also worry about, you know, what Tommy the bartender thinks about this initiative.
Some folks are great at being managers and managing people and communicating and sort of making sure you're sort of putting out fires and keeping everybody happy and being compassionate and all those things. But I don't know many people that go from being great manager to being great business owner, entrepreneur. It's like they tend to be managers. There tends to be, in just my personal experience, of course, but it tends to be the business owner entrepreneurial group.
Yep.
And then those that are great at managing that business, right? Or aspects of that business. Because there are certain things I think when it comes to being a business owner, and especially depending on what type of business you're in, depending on how high the conflict level might be, and the conflict level's high in the construction business. And what makes you good sometimes in that industry, what makes you a good business owner or entrepreneur is this personality traits that make you not a great manager. Very matter of fact, like things like, I don't care how you feel about it. You just do it.
Totally.
Right. And that's not the right way to talk to your employees and so on. Yeah, I get that. I understand all that. And if you're a really good business owner, you recognize your shortcomings and you find somebody else who's better at that than you are and have them do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I'd say, leans nicely into part two. The other challenging part is the whole reason, if you will, the whole raison d'etre that we're pursuing this, that I'm pursuing entrepreneurship, is freedom. It's physical freedom to be where I want, with whom I want, spend more time with my partner, be there for important life events. If we want to duck out and have a lunch, you know, awesome. Time freedom, financial freedom, emotional freedom, mental freedom. before those things are acquired, there is this long period of way less freedom. So people come all the time, friends, whatever, who aren't entrepreneurs, and they say, but you're the boss, just make it happen. Well, change management is maybe the hardest thing about scaling a company.
Sure.
Everyone has different abilities to buy into things, to see things, to move at their pace, right? They think differently. They're busy operating, not looking. Mm-hmm. And sometimes entrepreneurs wear binoculars and see way too far into the future and try to drag people through glass through something that these people still can't even see 5 feet ahead.
Right.
And this person's thinking 50,000 feet ahead. Change management sucks. It's so hard to go, we're going to be doing this now. And now you have to sell 100 people on the concept. Otherwise, you're going to have a revolt. Imagine if you had a house that you owned. It's your house, except it's also got 99 other people living in it. Mm-hmm. And you say, you know what? I want to get a new barbecue, but you can't because Janie doesn't like barbecues. Tommy is allergic to barbecues. Chris got a barbecue for the place 2 years ago and it failed. And every single thing you try to implement requires the buy-in of a bunch of people who actually live in that house but don't own it.
Right.
Is it really your asset?
Right. Sure. Yeah, that's a good point.
There's a lack of freedom. You become, and I see this with so many of my entrepreneur friends, you become somewhat of a pawn in a game that you created.
Right.
Who's the queen and king? Well, I don't know.
Sure.
But it's not, it somehow isn't you. And that's all in the pursuit of freedom, right? So you almost have to take a step back. You know, it's way more freeing to work for someone, for a job that you can quit in any time, no stakes.
Oh my God. I've honestly never in my adult life known the sensation of laying down at night, putting your head on the pillow and not worrying about work. I've never known that sensation. But since then, since age 23 or 4 or however old I was, I've never known the sensation of leave work and leave work. Mm-hmm. You know, when you have a job and you work for somebody else, or especially if you're in say you're in the public sector or
right.
or anything, it could be, you know, I've had these jobs before. I did everything. I was a, you know, newspaper delivery boy. I worked as a swimming instructor and lifeguard in high school. I was a golf instructor for many years throughout university. You know, I worked in a golf shop. I pumped gas for a number of years. I've done all those jobs. And in those jobs, you do your job and then you leave. And when you leave, you leave. You're not thinking about work while you're gone. But as an adult, I've never had that sensation. It's foreign to me.
And on the flip side, it's plus and minus.
Yes.
Because those things I don't have passion for.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's suffering, but it's purposeful suffering.
Sure. Yeah.
It's in the pursuit of something meaningful.
Yeah. I'm not saying that. I'm certainly not complaining in that sense.
Yeah.
But when I tell people this, I honestly mean it. And I've spoken with other business owners in the same way, or even people that not necessarily own a business, but they control their own destiny. You know, salespeople who are constantly hunting it down, and you know, who, you know, eat what they kill kind of thing. But mm-hmm. I've had that conversation with many people before. I wouldn't have it any other way. But the reality is, and you're probably the same way, my business is always on my mind, 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Right? As soon as you wake up in the morning, it's there. You're going to bed at night, you wake up halfway through the night, you're thinking about something. That's just how it is. I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm not complaining, but you just can't get away from it. That sensation is foreign to me. And I think it's probably why a lot of people say things like, and I've said this, that I don't know if I'll ever fully retire. I don't know if I could ever just not do anything work related, but fortunately for me, mm-hmm. the industry that I'm in, real estate development business and so on, I'm sure, you know, rental properties and so on, I'm sure I can have something later on when someday, many years down the road, when I don't go to work every day, but I'm a long way from, I want to go to work every day. Right? I'd get super bored if I had to turn that off at this point. Yeah.
We had a video kind of parodying that early on. That was an homage to MTV Cribs, if you remember that show. Mm-hmm. We were getting so much feedback that, oh, you left your careers and you're running a brewery with your friends. It must be so fun. And we were sleeping 3 hours a night, you know, the stress. We lived at the brewery.
Sure.
Physically in an apartment above it. Yeah. And at 6 a.m., the brewing started, 5 a.m., whatever, 7 a.m. And the bar staff finished at 3, 4, 5 in the morning. And my bedroom was next to the office where the bar staff would do their cash outs and the brew team would clock in. It was literally in our home. And we created a parody video in which the hashtag was living the dream, about, the sort of delusional perceptions we hold of what small business and owning your own thing is. And it's just us living in this shithole apartment, going like, "Hey, MTV, how awesome is this?" And it sucked. It's a very rewarding experience, but it really does suck.
Yeah.
So that was something we totally got early on, and we went, "Oh, this is only going to get harder and harder the further you go."
Yeah.
I wanted to add one note to something you said earlier about you're never going to stop working. Mm-hmm. A book I read 2 years ago. I can't remember what it was called, but it'll be easy to find. Essentially, it was about meaningful careers and finding passion and really about aging gracefully. And kind of the thesis of the book was that happiness is derivative of both hedonic and eudaimonic pursuits. Mm-hmm. Indulgent ones, such as cash bonuses or having a chocolate bar or a beer at the end of a hard week, vacations, whatever. And eudaimonic, in which you're building self-wisdom or awareness, you're educating yourself, you're volunteering your time at a nonprofit, or you're mentoring, and so on and so forth. And a lot of entrepreneurs tend to be very controlling, try to hold everything together, sure, and not accepting things the way they are. And a lot of them struggle with scaling because of that, because they have to approve every single piece of whatever that goes on. It just becomes so self-destructively rigid. But they had this example of happiness with aging, and they brought up two creative geniuses, arguably, Bach, the composer, and who was the guy with evolutionary biology?
Charles Darwin.
Darwin, thank you. Darwin and Bach. Mm-hmm. Brought them up as an example. Early on, we have this thing called liquid knowledge, which is very prefrontal lobe. It's very dynamic. It's pertaining to solving problems, thinking on your feet, and so on and so forth. Mostly strongest in our 20s and 30s, maybe your 40s. And it starts degrading as early as your 30s. The good news is that plastic knowledge, which is stored knowledge of experiences, grows well into your 70s, mm-hmm, if you're lucky. So transitioning from a sort of liquid knowledge to a plastic knowledge gracefully over time can help entrepreneurs find happiness. Bach went from composing to running a composition school in which he had more eudaimonic or giving pursuits, right, mentoring young composers, teaching them how to do it, right? And not trying to be the executor anymore. Sure. But Darwin's journals just showed a very unhappy old man who was constantly chasing it, still trying to say, "Oh, if I could just have one more theory, one more, sure, just like I did back in the day, right? Then I'd be happy," right? And it was like he's fighting uphill, right? He's pushing, mm-hmm, a boulder uphill. Mm-hmm. That part of your brain has been degrading for decades. Yeah, for sure. Right? But what is growing is his stored knowledge that he could pass on to young students for them to inspire them. Here's how you do research and so on and so forth.
Yeah, for sure.
So switching over time I also never want to stop working, but I want to change how I work.
Sure.
Switching slot machines again from doing the execution side of things to fostering that in other people, mentoring them, maybe being a professor, maybe being an advisor on a board, working with more charities and so on and so forth.
Sure.
That's there's my pursuit of happiness.
Yeah, it's good.
Blueprint.
I'm a few years older than you and just a few years longer in business. So I'm probably just, but you and I'm 47.
47? Okay.
But you and I know what you're saying there, and I share that same mentality. And I'm at a point there now where my business is at a place where I've fine-tuned it. And so now I have some time on my hands. And plus my children are older now. They're in grade 11 and 12. We're soon to be empty nesters. So I just have a little more time available, because there was a time when I was 12, 14, 16 hours a day, just didn't stop. And when my business was young.
Sure. Yeah.
And now my mind has gone to, well, it's not that I'm thinking, okay, well, great, I should be able to retire and let's start doing the math. It's not that at all. I'm thinking, now let's do some other stuff. Let's let's share some knowledge. I often thought, my wife could attest to this, I've probably said out loud a number of times over the years that if I didn't get into the construction industry and if I didn't get into owning my own business and in the real estate development world, when you go off to university, when I went to university, I went on academic scholarship. I went to university. I started taking sciences. I realized I don't want to do this. I just went into sciences because back in the 90s, if you were smart, the guidance counselor said, well, go into sciences then. You're smart, right? I mean, it couldn't be more wrong about just putting people in boxes like that. But I've always said, I probably, knowing now what I know about myself and what I like to do and so on, I would have loved to have been a teacher or a university professor and teach what I know. But in saying that, I didn't know it back then.
Sure.
Right? I didn't know it when I was 24 years old. If I had said, I'm going to be a teacher, and you graduate and you go get your teaching certificate, I could have taught curriculum.
Right.
But now I feel like I have way more shit to teach it that I just want to share some knowledge. And a lot of it's just conversational stuff. And the construction business, I say this, I tell everybody, the barriers to entry to get into the construction business, to be a contractor or home builder, zero. Tomorrow. You just register a business tomorrow. You got a cell phone in your pocket. You're in business. Boom. You're a contractor. You probably won't last through year one if you're the average person, if that's the amount of effort you put into it. It's easy to get into, but it's real easy to fall out of. And I've been doing it for about 20 years, and there were companies that were here before me that have since then gone under. There were companies that started after me and went under during that period of time. So it's not that it's an easy business to navigate, but I figured it out, and lots of people are trying to figure it out. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I can help some people figure it out.
Yeah.
It's not that there's anything in it for me personally, other than you get older and you feel like, oh, maybe I can help some people, right? So yeah, I feel like I know what you're saying there. It's good, and that's what I'd like to think retirement would look like: sharing some knowledge and sharing some wisdom.
Sure,
hopefully, right?
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully. I mean, the old trope is the sad person in the retirement home, and the family doesn't listen to them.
Sure,
right. So I'm trying to be deliberate with. Okay, stacking up this knowledge in these things, who's going to value that someday? I'm not having kids, so remove that from the equation. I can't imagine what Good Robot will be at that time, so let's just remove that. Who's going to be looking for it? Sure. Will marketing still be relevant? Will entrepreneurship? Maybe, but gently inserting myself in the next 10, 15, 20 years more and more into that, and trying to give more than I take, little bits at a time.
Sure.
Just to avoid that. Ending that for many people is not the most awesome years of their life.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And what a shame, because they could be.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else we should cover here? We've done a deep dive here into some business stuff. I like it. It's a good conversation. Anything that I may have glazed over, and even just from a company perspective, anything you'd like to mention? Any little shout out you'd like to make, or heads up you'd like to give anybody?
Oh boy.
What's on the horizon on the Good Robot front? Any new ventures, any new things coming up?
No new capital spends, nothing, keeping capital spends basically at zero after so much building for so many years. But, on the hospitality arm, we're heavily reinvesting at our original location in a meaningful way. I really want that to be the best bar in Halifax. Nice. Wholesale, we're the fastest growing in our category, right? So what's next? Things like this. This is our Michelob Ultra competitor. It's a 100-calorie beer. It's the only local 100-calorie beer.
Okay, great.
Right? So if you want the money to stay here, right, this is your Michelob competitor. Great. And in multiple taste challenges, we absolutely demolish them.
Excellent.
As well as the other light beers. On the co-pack side of things, I mean, it's at the point where, a Fortune 400 company reached out, right, for a very abstract product that unfortunately is NDA protected that I can't talk about. But some people might have it in their cupboard, so it's exciting to see where that's going in terms of making beverages, putting them into aluminum cans.
Yeah.
Right. CPG startups start and stop and fail all the time, but they're always going to need a facility to build them.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you do.
Yeah, that's great. Well, again, thanks for being here, man. I appreciate that.
Sure. This is fun.
Yeah, it was a good conversation. It's the
kind
of conversation I'm trying to have. So
yeah.
I can check that off my list. I can go over to the calendar now and take you off the list.
I can't wait to open the calendar and swipe that shit.
Yeah, it's all good.
There we
Thanks,
go.
Thanks a lot, Joshua. I appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah,
Thanks
happy
a
to
lot.
be here.
Yeah, take care.